Welcome everyone to another episode of Repairist Realm. I am Tony Guzman. I am with the technical ops teams here at ICAR, and to my right I have...
I'm Anton Verwist. I'm a subject matter expert, and I will also be the one in the video doing the weld procedure.
And on the phone we have...
Hi, I'm Gerry Senior Engineer for Paint and Body Damageability Repair at Ford Motor Company.
Great, thank you. So today we have a great session for you. As we go through, just like any other Repairist Realm episode, if you have any questions, please submit them on the chat during any time during the episode, and we'll try to address them at the end. In this episode, we're going to be walking through Ford's approved procedures for sectioning the rear rails on a current Ford Explorers and Lincoln Aviators. So we pre-recorded this event. That way you can see, so you'll see it playing in the background, and while that runs, Gerry and Anton, that's when they're going to provide a little bit of commentary and walk us through the procedures, share some key insights, and point out some helpful tips we discovered along the way. One thing that I want to make note and disclaim is that this is for demonstration purposes only. This vehicle was on a 4-post lift, and we only focused on the rail section. Obviously, if this vehicle was damaged in a shop, this vehicle will be on a frame machine or a dedicated fixture bench. So, Anton, Gerry, any additional comments before we begin?
Yeah, one thing that's very important here to remember is that a number of Explorers were getting totaled due to the fact that we did not have a sectioning option for the rear rail. In doing the complete rail, we're looking at a very invasive procedure if you're doing it all the way forward to the torque box area. Particularly the joints where the torque box attached to the inner rocker right in front of the wheel were quite difficult. So we heard you. A lot of technicians voiced their opinions and said, look, we really need some kind of a sectioning procedure for this vehicle. And as we look at this, the idea to have a less invasive repair that stabilizes the vehicle, gets it back into shape, because generally speaking, most of the damage on these is usually within the first inch or two of the rear rail. A vehicle takes a tag to the rear, it's crunched only for a couple of inches. So the ability to section here is a very strong one, and you'll hear me say that a couple times in the video. But I think that with the procedure that we worked with Anton and the team here, I think you're going to find this to be a very exciting option to repair these vehicles.
I agree, and you hit it right there. They spoke, you guys listened, so thank you for that. Anton?
Yeah, I think it's great. They came up with three points of where it can be put in at, which is awesome. Naturally, where you put it in would depend on the damage to the vehicle. First thing you would have to do is get the structure back to its original state. Once you get it back to its original state, look at it before you even start pulling it, where it's damaged, where you feel it needs to be sectioned. They gave us 3 options here, which I think is great. It's great to have 3 options. Like Gerry said, sometimes it's just the first inch or so that gets damaged. Sometimes it goes back a little bit further. So we'll discuss which one we used and why, and I think we got some great stuff here.
And I think that's an important piece, right? Figuring out, pretty much getting a repair plan together before you begin the procedure.
Yep, inspect, look, plan. That's the biggest part of it.
Yep, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to show you the first clip, and that's exactly what you did, Anton, while we were there. So again, just a little disclaimer on this. And then we will get right through the vehicle. So not only did you get a repair plan, but on the cart there, you have quite a bit of the tools before doing that repair. So you're getting all those tools ready.
Yes, I have a copy of the repair procedure. Once again, there's 3 options. I'm inspecting the vehicle. Naturally, if it's a damaged vehicle, you have to determine which section you need to replace. So here we're just looking. I'm looking to see where I'm going to put it in at. Once again, this is for the video. I have 3 options. I'm not going to go with the hardest one. I'm not going to go with the easiest one. I'm going to pick the third one. And if if we can pull up the repair procedure, we can get a closer look at the measurements here. You can see they gave you the measurements from the back at the rear body panel. The first one there is the 212 millimeter mark. So naturally, if the damage was just confined in that area, you could section it there. If it's back a little further, we can go to the 410 millimeter mark. I'm guessing, my guess from working on vehicles over the years, it's probably going to be either the first one or the second one that you use. Naturally, if it goes back a little further, we got the 570 millimeter mark, which I think is great. Other than that, you're putting in the full rail, which was the procedure that was initially designed. And like Gerry said, vehicles were totaling. It was very intrusive to the vehicle. That frame rail literally goes all the way almost up to the front seat. So I think this is a great option, Gerry. I think a lot of people are going to be happy about this.
I think so. You also notice too, if you look at this picture, the 570 mark, notice there's the nut for the rear bolt-in cradle or subframe. You can see we tried to stay out of that area by going just to the rearward of that. So that's about the outer limit for the section that we figured here when we looked at this repair. And we'll cover a little more as we go here, but thank you.
Perfect. So we'll go on to the next video here. And that is where you're going to start making your cut sections.
Yes, there's the service part on the bench. You can see I already marked off the measurements per the repair procedure. This is the one thing that I always recommend. When you're working on a vehicle that's been damaged, it's very difficult to take those measurements from the rear body panel forward, which usually the repair procedures tell you from the back to where you're going to cut. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to reverse the measurements. I'm going to find a good reference point on the front of this rail. And we're going to mark, so I found a reference, center of a hole there. That's a hole where the cradle bolt or something goes into. I checked on the vehicle. It's a good location. So I'm going to measure their back. So not only do we have the measurements from the service procedure going from the back to the mark, we're going to do one from the front to the mark, because if we have to transfer that number over to the vehicle because there's damage back there and we can't get an accurate measurement, I highly recommend that you do this before you start any cutting. You don't have to do it, but it makes it a lot easier. I know some guys have used tape. Some guys, once again, if you pulled the rail into place, you should be able to get that measurement from the back, but sometimes I've had rails that were kinked up pretty good that didn't want to come out, and we're going to cut it off anyway. So like I said, having the measurements not only from the rear but from the front to the going back to is crucial. So here I found my mark. Once again, I'm using the 410 mark. We want to make a little bit degree of difficulty and let everybody see exactly what's involved here. So I didn't take the easiest, I didn't take the hardest, I took the center cut here. And I do believe that, I'm guessing that's probably going to be the one that's very commonly used. So either that or all the way to the rear. Like Gerry said, a lot of times it's just got that little hit at the rear.
Yeah, it's I personally saw a vehicle that they were doing the entire rail on, and it got incredibly invasive. And the thing about it was that as we work with our crash safety as well as our materials engineering groups, we determined that this would be a great and viable option for the vehicle. So there's been a lot of review, a lot of discussion around this internally here, and hence we were able to come to the market with it. I have a saying that we use here sometimes: by technicians for technicians, and I try to look at my job first as a technician. And luckily, a lot of the people that I have the pleasure of working with at Ford have worked on bodies and done repairs like this, so they felt our pain with it.
Nice, and you guys came through. So next video we have, so after you did your cutting of the part, now you're gonna measure. So we'll play the measure mark. So now we're gonna play the next video here.
Yes, we cut the rail section where the desired location. Now what I'm doing is I'm actually using a piece of tape to go across the measurement. You'll see it's a little easier, I believe it's a little easier getting a line across the cut location. It's just a little trick I've always used. Once again, make sure I put the piece of tape on the measurement 410, so make sure you mark the right side of the tape. Sometimes you can even draw a little arrow just to make sure that you're not cutting it on the wrong side of the tape, because I've seen it done before. So we're going all the way around. So we're marking it. I'm marking it in several locations. Once again, I have a firm belief. Measure twice, cut once, and measure twice is a minimum. Tony, you were there.
I saw you
saw me
measure a
measure
couple
quite
times.
often.
Quite often. Yep.
You don't want to cut it in the wrong place. Well, unless
only
you want to
have
buy
one part, right?
Yes, unless you want to buy another rail. So measuring is key. You can see I put the marks on there. Not only do I have the marks, I'm going to draw the line all the way through it. That way I can stay on the line. I'm not eyeballing my cut or making a rough cut. Once again, if you haven't done a whole lot of these, I've done quite a few over the years, not Ford, but other rails. If you haven't done a lot of these, take your time. Make sure you have it in the right location. You don't want to make a mistake here. I guess I can just emphasize on that.
I agree. I don't think there's enough emphasis on that, right? To make sure that, and you know, there's that old saying for a reason, right? To your point, measure twice, cut once. So I've heard that before growing up. All right, so
the question may come up: why do we offer only the whole frame rail, and why don't we offer the section? Well, in order to produce a short section, or even whatever within as a repair piece, we would have to cut an existing rail in service and then send it out and have it re-coated. By that time, we're into quite a bit of money. So the reason we commonly will give you the entire rail and say cut it as you see fit is in order to save money and keep it as that. Here's the other side. When you're running any type of a business concern, you're worried about inventory and how you're going to predict how many you're going to sell. We truly don't know how many we'll sell. So it works very, very well to have the technician cut a piece from a full service rail instead of giving them a section.
yeah, that makes sense from a manufacturing standpoint, right? So
it seems to, at least. So
here we have, so now after you've cut the section, you did your markings, right? Once we get on to the next video here, it seems like you're making more measurements here, Anton.
Yeah, here we're actually going in, and I'm just putting a mark on the center of the spot weld. You don't have to do that. It's just something I find it easier. You can see, I have that raised up. I've got a lighting on underneath there from the cameras. It's pretty good lighting. We don't always have that as text. That's up in a cubby hole. So you actually have to look in there. You can see I have a light in my hand just to locate all the spot welds. That just makes it easier for me to find them as I go. They show up really well. I don't accidentally take off one that I shouldn't. I don't go too far. I have it marked. I'm going to come back with my belt sander.
Just makes it for a nice visual to have,
Yep,
right?
it's just easier to see it,
Yep.
especially when you get old.
So now that you marked them, right, now you're going to remember.
he's younger than me.
I'm just thinking that's my faith.
Oh, yes. So I should also say, too, the belt sander, it's somewhat of a grinding disc. So the one we used was the 3M 33445 is the part number. It's a 60 grit disc. You can see it's purple of color. It is a grinding disc. We'll talk about that later, because as we're cleaning up the part, there's a difference between the grinding disc and the surface conditioning disc. This is very aggressive. This is boron. It's boron steel. It's high strength. We could drill those welds out, but unfortunately, drilling through boron tends to wear out your bits. Mm-hmm. So I find belt sanding is not the only way. I find using the belt sander is the best option to get faster, more accurate, and spend a lot of money on drill bits. The belts are cheap.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's really the best way to kill spot welds. I mean, I will say I love tools like the Spitzenagel spot weld cutter when you can use the backer. But when you're going from one side, the belt sander always seems to trump for me. They work very, very well. And
Yes.
in particular, when you're working on the F-150 and other aluminum intensive unit structures, the belt sander is key for removing the SPRs. Getting on another subject there, but looking at on these spot welds, it's definitely a great way to go.
I agree. So, and that's one of the questions that when I saw you using it, I asked you why not use the drill bits, but
Right.
it made sense after that.
And we are going to use drill bits here too. One of the things that we didn't bring up yet is this: there are 3 panels here. You have a lower rail, then you have a floor in between there, and we're going to see soon here that there's also an upper rail too that we have to go through. Now, between these 3 panels, there is also adhesive. So we're going to talk about that, and we all know the difficulty of. There are areas where we're going to be putting in plug welds that we have to go through the adhesive. We don't have a choice here, on that, and there is some degree of difficulty there welding it. The adhesive, there will be still adhesive between the upper rail and the floor panel. So because of that, we don't want to just take the welds at the bottom of the rail, because then we're just welding to the floor. So you'll see we're going to do some drilling here, so maybe we
And
can move
that
on.
was all part of the repair plan, right?
Yep,
that-
it's
that we
part of the
had, so-
repair. You can see me, okay, so now I'm going back through. Even though I use the belt sander, I can still see the center of the weld underneath there from the bottom. So what I'm doing is I'm drilling 1/8" pilot holes to mark where I'm welding from the top, because if I did notice that there are more welds at the top than there are at the bottom. We only have to loosen the lower rail. So if I was to go up to the top and drill down on all the welds, I would be taking some of the welds out that attach the upper rail to the floor. And we don't need to take those out. We only need to take the ones out from the lower rail. So once again, taking the 1/8" bit to me was the easiest way to mark them and figure out which one it was. Not only that, it gives me a little bit of a pilot hole, so that when I drill down with my 8mm bit,
From the
it
top,
makes it
which
easier.
we will
Yep.
play this video
Once
next
again,
year.
it saves the bit a little bit. We are going through
Yep.
boron steels here, so here now we are. I know which welds to drill through because I marked them from underneath with the 1/8" bit. So there is no guessing or measuring or.
Yeah, so now that we have the drills, right? We drilled out the spot welds. Now you're going to start cutting the section, and that's what we're going to see here. So if we can go ahead and play that clip.
Yep. Now it's time to cut the rail out. We released all the spot welds that are attached to the rail. Now we have to separate it at the seam.
Now the fun begins, right?
Yes. Here we're using the air saw. And I'm going right on that mark that I made to get a nice clean cut. Once again, if you're not real familiar with putting rails in, you haven't done a lot of them, there's nothing wrong with cutting a 1/4 of an inch in front of it or so, and then you can come back later. You can put your piece up there, decide where to trim it. Like I said, I'm pretty confident. I measured a lot, so you can see after I did the cut there, I did get the piece out of my way by grinding it off right around the corner of the flange. So at that 90-degree bend, I sliced it. So as I'm getting that out of my way, because I'm up in a cutty hole, it makes it easier for me to remove the flange.
The flange, which is the next video that we're going to show
It's easier to get
here.
into because I can come in from all angles, all sides. Not only that, the piece that I cut out, where I cut the old rail off, we are going to use that piece for our sleeve later. So here we are separating just the flange ends. You can see the rail's already been cut away. Our flange is now exposed. Like I said, I can come in there with a separating tool from any angle. It just makes it easier. Work one side of the weld, work the other side of the weld. You don't want to distort the panel up there. Do anything you possibly can. You'll see it pull away. You'll see some adhesive underneath there. Once again, we'll be able to clean the adhesive away on this side of the floor pan, But up top where it's between the panels, that glue is going to remain there.
So one thing on adhesive, some people say, well, go ahead and heat it up to loosen it up. But the problem that I've run into sometimes with that is that the adhesive becomes gummy and makes quite a mess. I have found with a lot of our adhesives in production, simply using the panel separation tool works really, really well with the sideways whack to it. When you hit the adhesive joint, you can remove the adhesive and break the bond, and then it's easier to grind when it's not all gummy. Just my 2 cents as a tech, but you guys do it as you see fit. But if I personally prefer to fracture the adhesive with a sideways hit with the panel removal tool like you did there, than heating it.
Yes, and it's separated fairly easy. I did have a heat gun off to the side. I didn't feel it was necessary. Just like you said, just giving it a couple taps. You shouldn't be having to, really. If you have to really beat down on it, chances are you didn't grind away enough of the weld. And there's a very fine line there too. You want to grind away enough of the weld, but you don't want to grind into the other panel.
Into the other panel, right?
Yeah.
So, one thing that I gotta say.
That's the beauty of the belt sander, is it's easier to not go too far, and you have a little more visual than versus when you're drilling. At least what I've found.
Absolutely, and I must say, Anton, when I was watching you make the cuts, make the repair, I was like, man, he's got a steadier hand than me. So, so now we're gonna start prepping the weld zone. So this is where, once we remove that rail section.
Right, here's where, now I changed the disc here. I no longer have that grinding disc on. So I now have a surface conditioning belt. I believe I used the brown one, which the part number for that is 64475 from 3M. It's called a surface conditioning belt. It's almost like a scuff wheel. It's just designed to take just the paint and the primers off. We don't want to grind away the metals. We want to keep everything there that we possibly can. You can see we're cleaning up the inside of the rail and the outside of the rail, because we are going to be putting in a backer sleeve in there. So there is going to be some welding going on in there, and we have to clean that out. Absolutely. In order to weld to it. We're going to be putting in the weld primers.
You got to have good corrosion protection, right?
Yeah, so that'll all be coming up. So
once you scuff that, now you're going to get ready. So we'll play the next video of prepping the sleeve, right?
What I love about those prep belts, what works really, really well, it also does a great job of deburring. So when you're working in there versus a grinding belt, it'll definitely smooth the edges, and you minimize the chance of cutting your skin on it when you're doing it.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what it really works well on E-coat and other coatings, and they're definitely a great product.
Yep.
Here you're making the sleeve up.
Here I'm making the sleeve, and I just want to point out a little trick. It's a 50 millimeter sleeve. 2-inch tape is roughly just under 50 millimeters. So once again, I didn't have to measure that. That is the existing part that I cut off. I prepped the end of it before I cut it, just to make it easier to hold on to steady. You don't have to try to scuff that off getting too close to your hands. So I put my 2-inch tape on there, roughly 50 millimeters, just under. I'm cutting my sleeve now. And the sleeve, we'll talk about here. There's 2 ways of putting the sleeve onto the vehicle, onto the part or the vehicle. Generally, I would highly recommend putting the sleeve on the service part first if the rear body panel is off. On this vehicle, which a lot of times the rear body panel will be off after a collision if you're putting the rail in, not always. This one, this car was not in a collision, so we left the rear body panel on the vehicle. And because I couldn't take that sleeve, put it on the service part, and slide it in, I chose to put it on the vehicle, weld the sleeve on the vehicle, so that I could put the service part up as a cap, just cap it up there.
Right.
So.
And that made sense, right? Again, because of the no damage on the vehicle.
Right,
so.
but if I'm doing that with the rear body panel off, I definitely want to put the sleeve on the service part and slide it in.
Slide it in.
If you're a little bit off on your cut, you have got a little bit of room to slide. Once again, when we'll talk about the root gap later, but you know, you also have to, when you're cutting, you have to take into consideration the sleeve's going to be in there, and you need a little bit of a root gap for the weld. So we'll see that coming up.
So we will continue on to the so once we get that sleeve cut, now we're going to start prepping the.
Yep. So here I got the sleeve ready. We're going to use the weld through primer for corrosion resistance. The weld through primer goes on the mating surfaces. They go on the mating surfaces. I am not putting weld through primer on the exterior of the rail. You can see me putting it on the inside of the rail where the sleeve's going to go. I'm now doing the flanges. You don't have to do a lot of masking for this. All I did was I took my my notes and just folded it up just to stop from getting overspray all over the vehicle. You can see there is no weld through primer on the outside of the rail. It is on the inside, not the outside. Once again, the weld through primer, we use the 3M 5917 weld through primer for this. And once again,
Now we get ready to install
matting
it.
surfaces only. A lot of people don't understand that. So
I can see everyone just spraying.
you want to weld. You want to weld. You want to weld the clean metal. So, like I said, all I did was you could take a piece of cardboard. You could use anything just to stop it from getting where you don't want it, overspray on the vehicle,
Yeah.
whatever. And if you do get some on the outside, you know, you can sand it off, wipe it off, whatever you want to do.
Absolutely. So now you got the sleeve, you prepped it, right? So now we're going to install the sleeve. So walk us through a little bit on this one here.
Yep, like I said, on this one, I'm putting the sleeve on the vehicle itself. I'll say it again, I know I've already said it a couple times. I would definitely put it on the service part if the rear body panel was off. Slide it right in. So I'm setting it up there. I'm going to spot weld it on with the squeeze type resistance spot welder. Put it in place. Naturally, you're going in 25 millimeters, leaving 25 millimeters into the part, 25 millimeters exposed.
So the key is here is the MIG plug welds and the squeeze type resistant spot welding keeps the heat affected zone down. Now with the doubling up with the backer, some people will say, oh my gosh, you're MIG seam welding boron. In this situation, because the material is doubled up, the materials and the safety engineers okayed the repair because of the fact that it is doubled up. You have the sleeve, the backer doubling up the material in the area. So any degradation within the boron from any of the seam welding we do later is offset by the sleeve that's in there. But where you can, and where we specify in the repair, the squeeze type resistant spot welding or the MIG plug welds keep the heat affected zones down, and that is within the guidelines of our Ford welding, the welding guide. So.
Gotcha. Nope, that's a really good explanation there, Jerry. So
I
now
know there's going to be people who say, oh my gosh, you know, so wanted to clarify.
Nope, makes sense. So now we're going to start prepping the service part. So we'll go ahead and play the next clip.
Here. So rear body panel. Let's go back to the rear body panel. Once again, we drilled the plug welds out on the floor pan from the upside. There are 6 welds at the back of the rail because the rear body panel has a cross member attached to it too. So there's a cross member that goes back there that we will be welding from the bottom. So I'm putting the 8mm welds just in the back of the rail. There's no need to go all the way down the rail because once again we already drilled the holes through the upper rail and we can weld from the top down rather than trying to weld it from up underneath. So those are
which is always fun.
Yes, yes. So that's what we're doing here is we're putting the 3 welds at the back, and that'll show up later as we're welding. You'll see it in the car exactly what I'm talking about, where the rear cross member meets the rail. right behind the rear body panel.
Yeah, and I think we have it coming up here shortly. So here you are, just prepping that piece, getting it ready. Then you're just
Again, the
deburring
3M
here.
surface conditioning disc and the burgundy ones here work very, very well for preparing the flanges, deburring the part, as you can see, and getting the E-coat ready to go for the welding and other operations.
Yes, and once again, the best thing to weld metal to is when it's metal. I always like to pull the E-coat back a little bit. There is we do have to go back later and make sure we use corrosion protection. The corrosion protection on the inside surfaces are the weld through primer. That is a reaction that happens from the heat of the welder. So here, once again, got the service part. We're putting the weld through primer on the mating surfaces, not the exterior where we're going to be doing the squeeze type resistance welding at the back or anything, not on the seam, just where the flanges meet,
where
and
the
we
flanges
can't get
meet, and
into
we're going to
later.
see that here,
We
I
can't
believe,
get
in the next
into later,
video.
yes.
Once you start welding the service part here, if we press play. So now you put it together.
I have the panel clamped up in there. I am just, when I set it up in there, the two sides of it met perfect, right exactly where I wanted them. So what I did is I tack welded them in place. They fit up real nice. The third one you can see is a little bit off, and it was very simple. I put my tack welds at the 3 corners up top, then I came down to the 2 at the bottom where it met really well. You can see we got a nice root gap. You can see the backing plate. You can see the one flange though is sticking out a little bit, and it was very simple once I tacked it in place just to push it. Because the other 2 flanges met up so nice, I want to get them tack welded while I can, rather than put a clamp on there and compromise those coming in a little bit. So. Like I said, if you looked at it, you could see that one flange looks like it's off, but after I tack welded it, I just pushed it in a little bit and put a tack weld on it before we started our continuous weld. So here, I'm now doing the continuous weld, stitch, because we want to keep the heat effect zone down. You can see on trigger, off trigger. I started at the top, came down to the bottom of the rail using a stitch. I then went to the bottom of the rail at the opposite corner, came back to where I welded at. Once again, we want to try to keep that heat down on that rail as much as possible. Anything you can do to keep it down. So started at the top on one side of the flange, came down to the bottom, went to the bottom at the opposite corner of the first weld I put in, came back to it, and then as that corner that I started at the bottom, I now go back up to the top on the other side
Once it's cooled
and
down.
work my way down. That just helps it cool a little bit. Once again, it is boron. Heat does matter. We want to do whatever we can to keep the heat effect zone down. Once again, don't just pull the trigger and go down. You can see me going on and off the trigger. Let it cool if you have to a little bit. Now, here we are. We're putting the plug welds in at the top. Much easier. Much easier to start at the top and you know, look down than it is to be underneath the vehicle. Once again, you're going to see a little fire in here. There is some adhesive between there, so we all know it's a little bit different welding with the adhesive under there. There it is, it's burning away a little bit. I wanted to show the fire. That's the fire coming out from underneath the seam.
From the adhesive.
It is there. It does make welding a little bit more difficult. And here we are. Now we're back at the bottom doing the 3 welds at the back that were not visible at the top because it had a cross member there. Final step, we are putting the resistance welds into the rear body panel to the rail. So after we do all our welding, we clean it up. You can see it, we cleaned it up. There are no skips or voids in there. There are no open spots. you know, once again, as you clean up that weld, you don't want to overgrind. You want it cleaned up so that the paint can stick to it. Once again, follow the proper procedure, you know, generally epoxy primer over the welds, whatever Ford recommends. Here's our shot from underneath. We can see, I left that on there before I cleaned it up. We can see the heat marks of the welds from the top. We got a good heat mark on the bottom of the rail. So
No, that was good.
confident that it was a good weld. So
Absolutely. Nope, this was really good, really good. So, any final thoughts, Gerry?
Yeah, so to finalize your repair, naturally as you've dressed the welds and go through and do your coatings underneath, epoxy or etch primer throughout the exterior of the repair, be sure that you go on the inside of the repair. We focus on the 3M rust fighter on the internal. We have the part number on that, Tone?
we have a 3M cavity wax here,
3M cavity wax.
Yep,
8852.
8852, and what is nice is they come with different size wands. This wand is perfect for getting inside that rail. Once again, if you don't put corrosion protection in there, you're going to be in trouble in no time. Bare metal rusts very quick.
This is a very wet area, and the 360 fog of that wand is particularly attractive to get into all the heat affected zones of the welds. Naturally, you know, with the weld through primer and everything else, we try to protect it, but this gives that extra layer that you really need in this wet area of the vehicle. And then exterior, however you see fit, if the vehicle's undercoated, whatever, or perform undercoating on that, add some extra service to the customer to protect the rear of the vehicle after well. So seam seal as production intent, where there's seam sealer on the inside, perform the seam sealing in the same manner. Utilize your favorite products there, or as outlined in our Ford workshop manuals, and your repair is ready for finishing and go back together.
Oh, that's a great closing. So, well, hopefully you guys like this episode. If there's anything else that you guys would like us to cover, let us know. Drop it on that email or send it to repairsrealm@i-car.com. Otherwise, we're going to go straight to the questions here, and I know we got a few that came in. So let's see. First question up on the list is, you talked about pulling on the rear rail. The rail is boron. This typically means no repairs and no pulling. Can we pull?
You want to try to pull it to as much dimensional stability as you can. Yes, I've been there. I have pulled on boron, and it is incredibly tough to pull. But you want to try to get the surrounding areas within dimensional stability. Hence the logic we say with pull to dimensional stability. Now, are you going to repair it? No, you're going to replace it. But the thing is, you want to get the surrounding areas and everything back into proper alignment before you go cutting it apart.
Yes,
the general guidelines of the road.
I will add to that too. I know exactly what you're talking about. It doesn't pull. Don't forget, we do have a floor back there that has to go back into place. I have taken and put cuts into the boron rail so that it's not working against you. You know, once again, the structure of the vehicle has to be back in place before we can put that part on. However you have to do that. If you have to cut the service part off and continue your pulls, but the key is the structure has to be back to its original state within the recommended millimeter before you even consider where to put that rail in. So, and that also too, where that rail is damaged is going to determine how much of which sectioning procedure you use here, whether it be the 212, the 410, or the 570. So, any way you can pull. When we talk about pulling the structure back into the place, it's not necessarily talking about that part that you're changing. Yes, you can cut it off, and don't forget, that's why I brought up the reverse measuring, because you can't always get that piece back to its original state, but the rest of the car has to go back to its original state. So if the rear body panel is there, once again, chances are you're changing the rear body panel. Chances are you're not changing the floor, because the floor can easily be straightened. So once again, the tech needs to use good judgment. Experience usually helps out, and it never hurts if you are not sure and you don't have the experience. Reach out to somebody, even if it's us, a fellow tech or whatever. I taught at the college for 18 years part-time as I was working in the industry. I've got over 25 years, 30 years of structural behind me. I always say accidents are similar, but no two accidents are alike. So there is always that planning procedure and judgment that has to come into effect. So.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to add is that, if you do need to put the trunk floor, bear in mind that no matter what the level of damage to the vehicle, and Anton, you're totally right. When you have a vehicle, every vehicle gets damaged differently. The level of impact, angle, speed, everything comes into play. So when you're looking at what's required and you're developing your repair plan, remember that the sectioning, no matter what, saves you significant and possibly saves the vehicle from being totaled because of the fact that you're not doing the entire rail assembly, both sides or one side. So you may have to do a trunk floor, you may have to do a rear cross member, rear body panel, et cetera, but that's entirely up to you. You have that vehicle in front of you as the judgment, and it is your decision to go forward how you see fit. What's the next question, Tone?
So we have a couple of other questions, and again, I want to remind everyone watching live, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them on the lower right-hand side of your chat there. So the next question, and I think we alluded to this one a little bit, but I'll ask it again. The procedure states to remove the back panel and reinforcement. Why didn't we do that when it's called out on the procedures?
I can answer that. Yes, we worked on an undamaged vehicle. Not realistic from where I came from. I can't think of too many cars, undamaged vehicles that I put frame rails in. So yes, we did bring that up. Chances are, in a collision, the rear body panel will be off the vehicle. There is that time, very rare, where there is a rail damaged or part damaged, and the panels around it, existing panels around it, are not. So yes, it is in the repair procedure to remove the part. And once again, like I said, I would prefer to have that part off because I also would prefer to put the sleeve on the service part so that I can slide it in. And with that sleeve in there, with a little bit of slide, and you do have to have a root gap, a little bit of a root gap, when you put that rail in, it gives you a little leeway of where it goes, because before you weld that part in, we have to make sure it's in the correct spot. My preferred as a tech method to put a frame rail on is to have it on a dedicated fixture. It holds the spot right in place. One thing nice about the dedicated fixture too is, because we all know metal can change a little bit as it warms up, as you weld it. If it's secured in that dedicated fixture, we know it's in the right place, three-dimensional, length, width, and height. You weld it, it stays there, and by the time you're done, we know it's right. There was no movement. So there are other methods out there. You could use the laser measuring systems. Whatever you use, you need to have a three-dimensional measurement to make sure it's correct.
Absolutely.
That's all part of getting the structure right. But you are correct. It's nice to have the rear body panel off, and it does say that in the service procedure. And I would say, I'm guessing off the top of my head, but 90%, if not more, of the time, that rear body panel, if that rail's crushed, that rear body panel is probably going to be crushed too.
The main thing we wanted to show you with this is the actual rail sectioning. Going to the rear body panel, we've all done rear body panels if we're a structural tech. It's pretty straightforward. But being as this is a newer procedure, well, similar to older vehicles that we've done with rear frame rail sectioning, we wanted to show you firsthand some of the nuts and bolts of the actual frame rail section. The rear panel, trunk floor, I mean, we could do many, many videos all around the vehicle, right? So the idea was to show you the meat and potatoes, the main point of doing the rail.
Yeah, absolutely. So
What else you got?
another question we have is, let me see, wouldn't we be able to replace the adhesive if the back panel and reinforcement were removed to allow for access with spot welds? We also would not have to drill through the floor layers and only remove it from the bottom.
In a word, yes, you could do that. And that is a excellent way to repair it. Anton and I talked about that in the beginning, and the key is that when you're looking at any time you can use a squeeze type, or in this case, the MIG plug welds were advantageous for the demonstration. However, you have the options and you have that choice as a technician, depending on the damage and how the vehicle is hurt. So make that judgment depending on the equipment, your level of training and experience. We've shown you the MIG plug welds because of the fact that the vast majority of shops do have MIG equipment, of course. They're all going to have them if you're doing structural repair. But we wanted to show you the basics. Now, if you've got a squeeze type, by all means use it. And you've got the tail panel off of the vehicle, go for it.
And yes, here, the focus was the sectioning of the rail. That's what we're showing here.
Yep.
You know, how to put the sleeve in, how to weld it, how to keep down on the heat effect zone. Yes, me and Gerry did talk about that. That was one of my first questions, the upper rail. The ideal situation would be to put the upper and the lower rail in. Once again, in a collision, you may need both parts. But once again, we are focused here on what to do on the rail itself.
Yep, which
Ideal
leads,
The aviator-
situation, yep. Ideal
Yeah.
situation would be change the rear body panel, change the upper. Once again, floor is made out of different steel. We can hammer and dolly it. We can straighten it. We can do whatever. That would be great and it could happen. It could very well happen that you need that upper portion too. But prior to this procedure, if you were putting the upper in too, you were putting in the entire lower rail. So now if you were to put the upper in, you were putting the upper in and sectioning the lower rail, which is not as intrusive, because if you see how far that rail goes towards the front of that vehicle and how much you have to take off to put that full rail in, it's a lot of work.
The thing they'll tell you about here is that when you look at this rail and you look at the actual repairs that are involved, this will save many, many vehicles. And I would have loved to have had this come out when we launched the vehicle. However, it did take quite a bit of time for people to make a decision, for studies to be done and decisions to be made as far as how we would progress. I'm glad to say that we were able to do this to help you in your day-to-day lives in repairing these vehicles. But the key is that you, as the structural tech, you're in the best position to make that judgment as far as how you see the damage to the vehicle, what your abilities are, your frame rack, your welding equipment, everything comes into play. As compared to doing an entire rail, it's far less invasive. But I'll tell you a little story. I went to a local dealership. We looked at a totaled Aviator. The vehicle had taken a hit very, very low on the rail. And it was interesting because the tail panel, actually, he straightened it, believe it or not. But the rail was crunched for the first 2 inches of the rail. So he was able to straighten back the tail panel. It wasn't that damaged. It wasn't cracked. It wasn't really hurt. And similar to this repair, but when he pulled the entire rail out of the vehicle, it quickly pushed it into the threshold of being totaled. And it's weird. Again, the angle of attack, the speeds, what the attitude of the vehicle was in the braking event when it got hit, all sorts of things come into play.
oh, sky's the
So I
limit
think
when it comes to that.
the sky's the limit. Yeah. I mean, I do a lot of restoration and vehicles rust differently, right? You know, you look at
Absolutely.
one vehicle and you may be doing different repairs versus another. It's the same with your collision, of course. I hope we answered your question. I hope that helps you with your question there.
I think we did, which leads us to the next question. I think we kind of alluded to this one a little bit, but it states, could you cut the damaged rail shorter, remove it, and then place the cut service rail over it on the vehicle, make your mark, and then do a final cut that way?
Yes.
You could.
You could do it however you can get that part off I shouldn't say however, there are limits, but whatever works best for you. Once again, I cut the rail differently because it was up inside of a pocket. Have I ever done that method? Oh, definitely.
This is where
Yeah, me too.
your
Yeah, me too.
experience comes in,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Your repair planning.
Yep.
There's a lot of factors that tie into this.
The one thing I liked by doing it the way I did it is because if you saw, I used the slide rule to make sure when I put it up there, how I had that line marked in there, I was also able to transfer it over to the rail itself so that the angle and everything was the same, if that makes sense. But if you could take that service part and set it up in there and mark it as well, yeah, whatever works. The theory behind that is to however you're doing it is to make sure it's accurate. So whatever, like I said, I mentioned I've seen people make templates. That's the method I used for this one. I've used templates before. I've overlapped parts before. Whatever you find is the best and most accurate way to cut it out of there. You don't have to do it the way I did it. Like I said, you could drill that all the way through. I didn't have to go in with the belt sander at the bottom either. I did that because the boron, once again, I don't have to drill as much. The belt sander cuts it better than the drill bit, and anybody that works in the shop, I know a lot of people pay for their own drill bits, whatever. Well, however that works, the belt sander usually is considered material that comes in, whatever it gets covered, however it gets covered. We can't discuss all that, but once again, it's easier to change the belt than it is to change by a drill bit.
So next question.
The key is we just use this as a general guideline. I mean, if you get 3 or 4 of us out having a beer and we're talking about what our favorite way to section a rail is, you're going to get 3 or 4 different answers, especially in the nuances of the repair. What we've shown here is some basic stuff, and this is just the experience of a couple of different people within the industry. I think the thing is that you understand the basic parameters of the repair. Make it your own. Just follow the general guidelines. Sorry, Tone, what's next?
No, not a problem. Thanks for explaining that there. So next question is, why not rivet bond the upper rail because of the adhesive?
I suppose that would be a question for Gerry and the engineers.
The fastening engineers were comfortable with the MIG plug welds. Because of the fact that rivets, in particular structural rivets, have to be documented a little further. We understand some of the basics of a MIG plug weld. We understand rivets, of course. We build vehicles out of them, and we've approved repairs. However, I think the key is that we were comfortable with the MIG plug welds and squeeze type here to be in norm with the rest of the industry. I would not advise that you do any type of structural rivet in this repair. It would be a little more difficult. I think the key point is stay with what we've got documented based on the input from my engineers, and I prefer if you stay with that if you're good.
Yes, and that's come across. I worked for other car manufacturers where I was a certified tech, aluminum. We did a lot of rivet bonding, so I'm firm. I have nothing against rivet bonding. It works. The one thing, there were times where we questioned things on why we're doing certain things certain ways, and the answer that I got back was because the engineers said so. So that doesn't mean I always agree with them, but once again, if an engineer says, to do it one way and let's say something happens, another accident or something, and you didn't follow the proper procedure, that could be a liability issue. We're not going to talk about that. But once again, I'm a firm believer in if you follow the repair procedure, somebody else tested it, somebody else is standing behind it, you're not taking the law into your own hands, and the way the cars are being built and the way the steels are nowadays, we need to have some type of guide saying that, okay, yes, somebody approved this, other than me, or other than Tony, or other than Gerry. I mean, this is something that came down the pipeline, and they're willing to put their name on it. So I'm not.
All right.
What
well,
else, Tony? Any more?
We got one more question here. Are there no supporting plug or spot welds on each side of the sectioning joint backer?
Yes, you can do that. In this situation, we chose to go with the single one. I think in a repair procedure, we document supporting plug welds or squeeze types on both sides of the joint. So you can do either way. You are allowed to do that. The key is that the MIG plug welds do minimize the heat affected zones when you're going on a one-way where you can't get in with the squeeze type. So yes, the answer is yes to that.
Okay. Oh, and we have another one here. I think this is the last one. Now that he has drilled through the floor, he must plug weld through 2 layers. Should this be a step weld with an 8mm for the middle layer and 10mm on the top layer? Why would you drill from the top and weld rather than the plug weld from the bottom?
One reason why I came down from the top is because you can weld down from the top, but we're talking about the weld, right?
The weld, right.
Okay.
I think that's...
Read that question again. Let me make sure I'm answering this properly.
He's talking about staggering it, Anton.
Okay, staggering,
Like
yes.
doing stagger weld. So you're going to do one with 8mm hole and then another with a 10mm.
Yep. I see what he's saying. I like it. I'm not going to say I don't like it, but unfortunately that's not what was stated in the service procedure. It said 8mm hole. I'm not disagreeing with him. That would be something that possibly Ford could consider. Once again, I work for iCar. I don't work for Ford. I assisted. So I will go back to how the engineers said it. I'm not saying that's not a bad idea. It would help clean that inner panel out a little bit and clean some of that adhesive away, but
yeah, our common repair would be 8mm hole for the spot for the plug weld. When you're looking at this, you are correct. It is a bi-level weld, if you will. I would say if you are comfortable doing that with 10, we would be okay with that. But I would say the other side is that you do have the option of welding up. If you're comfortable welding above your head, and many welders are, I am. I do it on a lot of my restoration work. So I would say that you could perform it either way. You could go either the method Anton showed here, or you could make plug weld going up from the bottom through an 8mm hole.
Great.
Anton, you agree?
yes.
If you
and
want to
one of the-
weld
one-
above
one-
your head,
One of the reasons,
Yeah.
yes, because of the adhesive and dripping and everything else, I came down from the top, and we did. That was a topic of discussion as we did it. Once again, there's more than one way to skin a cat. It comes down to, are the welds in the right spot? Are the welds good? Did we do everything according to the repair procedure? Whether we welded it from the top or the bottom, as long as the panels are joined. That was a topic of discussion. So once again, good question and a good thought.
Yep.
And
these are excellent questions.
they are.
Yeah, no, thank you
Yeah,
to the
excellent.
viewers watching. I guess we're going to wrap it up. And I just want to reiterate that if you have any other questions while you are watching on demand, please submit them to repairsrealm@i-car.com. Or if you have any ideas for topics or other episodes that you would like to see, drop those in the email. Otherwise,
One thing I would like to ask before we part, please include, if you guys would like to see other procedures on other Ford unibody vehicles similar to this, let me know. Feel free to drop a line on other vehicles you would like to see procedures for. If you're seeing a higher incidence of totals, if you're seeing higher incidence where I could save that if I had this sectioning option. So if you wanted to go ahead and give that input, I would greatly appreciate it. The other thing I'll say is that in the estimating software, remember that we as Ford have some of the best options of repairing not only our unibody vehicles, but our full frame vehicles. So be sure to look at all the parts, the brackets, the sections that are available when we're talking a general direction of sectioning, both for our full frames and our unibody platforms. Be sure that you see all that within the part systems and the estimating systems. The more that you buy, the more we can offer. And I do consider us one of the best in class, particularly vehicles like Bronco, Ranger, F-Series, Super Duty, Expedition, Navigator. On full frames, we have the most frame repair parts in the business. When you look at unibody, we have a lot of options for sectioning as well, and especially in aluminum too. So be sure that you look at our procedures, make your repair plan, but also look at the estimating platforms and determine what parts are available that you can save that vehicle. So thank you
Excellent.
guys for having me. As always, an excellent, excellent session. Anton, great job. Tony, great job as always. Thank you guys.
Absolutely. We
Yep.
appreciate it, Jerry. Appreciates you and
Yep.
appreciates the people watching. Again, drop us a line, any topics related to Ford, right, at repairsrealm@i-car.com. Otherwise, we will part and we will see you again next month. Thanks for watching.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Thanks.